And I'll tell you that whole situation and how yucky it all felt was such good fuel for the fire of opening up SVI and making sure it was successful. So I spent the next 4 months from April 1st until August 1st building out the full operations. I found a location. I got credentialed. I got an EMR. I got a practice management software. I built a series of videos for educational material. I built marketing material. I built my own website. I didn't have any money at the time. I was roughing it. I found staff. I renovated the office. My dad and I ran the wires through the office. I built out the IT, got all the computers, set up the internet, got a phone system, started networking with ODs. And on August 1st, we saw our first patient. This is April 1st, 2023 to August 1st, 2023. 4 months, and then we turned the light switches on. And it's been a hell of a journey ever since then. But it was started out of necessity because my back was up against a wall, and it certainly showed me that when a human's back is up against a wall, they can be very creative, very innovative, and will do what it takes to survive.
That may be the fastest opening of a successful private practice in ophthalmology ever.
It's possible. There were certainly things that were fortuitous. I found a location that was mostly built out already.
Walk me through that, because you just listed off a lot of things you did, 20 things you did. To someone thinking about starting their own practice, what is a corporation?
Yeah, good
Where
question.
do you even go to find out how to start a corporation? What type of corporation? What tax filing entity? Where did you go to learn all this stuff? Because I know you learned a lot in fellowship, but I highly doubt they were teaching how to open your own S Corp.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of consultants out there. And what I learned during this process is that the role of a consultant and the reason that consultants have jobs is because they make somewhat complicated ideas or processes seem super complicated and impossible to accomplish without their assistance. And that's simply not the case. Each of the different steps led itself into the next one. So you can't do anything until you have a corporation. So 2 different groups of people can form a corporation, can help you form a corporation. You can do it yourself, but it's better to have true help with this. One is an accountant, one is a lawyer. First thing we did, I will never forget this. I sat down on my dad's floor in my dad's living room, my parents' living room. He called his accountant, who he worked with forever, and it's a father-son accounting practice, as a lot of them are. And the son walked me through every single step of forming the corporation. And we did it right then and there. We went line by line. And keep in mind, this was March 30th, meaning April 15th was 2 weeks away. And my dad had enough goodwill with them that this guy was willing to give me his time to do that. And that shows how far goodwill goes. So we formed the corporation. I chose to be an S corporation because in Pennsylvania, there are advantages to being an S corporation over an LLC when you are a sole owner. As an S corporation, you can be a sole owner, and all of the profits that flow through pass through to the owner of that S corporation. One nuance to an S corp is that you have to pay yourself what's considered a reasonable salary. So you have to take a W-2 as well as a K-1 from it. And that seems to be the simplest structure for at least a single owner. For a group of owners, LLC might make more sense. Now, one thing that I screwed up that I didn't know is that we filed as just a regular old corporation, not a professional corporation. That got me into trouble a little bit later, but fortunately, I was able to unwind that. Once the corporation is formed, you have to choose an address. So for the corporation, I just chose my home address at the time. That also came back to haunt me later. The next thing that needs to happen is you need to secure capital. So this was March of 2023, which was really the very early days of ChatGPT. Like the earliest of days of it, at least that people knew about it. And I sat there and spent 2 days just probing it with questions and expanding it and making an entire business plan. Because when you go to the bank, you need to bring a business plan. And I used ChatGPT, told it my ideas, and it just quickly put all of that together. I imagine now it would be 10 times better. By the way, for anyone listening, that business plan I'm more than happy to share that with you. I've shared that with a lot of people already, and I think it's helpful to just have the backbone of it. And I feel no personal attachment to any of this information that we're sharing here. So once the corporation is formed, once the business plan is generally set in motion and you can start talking to the bank, they're not going to give you a loan until you have a location. The other thing that can't happen until you have a location is you can't start credentialing with insurance. Because if you credential, you need to credential with an address. So I started looking for locations. And one of the thoughts I had was I could go and sublease from an optometrist. And I actually set my address as one of the local optometry offices, as that being my address. And I started the credentialing process with them as my address. It's still today listed as a service location for SVI. Once I had that, at least I could kick off credentialing. The problem there is that when Medicare when you go to credential with Medicare, they will send someone to audit your location. And if your name is not on that door, they will deny it and defer you for 6 months. So that was a bit of a gamble. The location comes in two forms. One, it can be a complete fresh build out. Or two, it can be a acquisition. So there was another older ophthalmologist in my area who had 2 offices. And this office that I'm now ultimately in was his second office that he barely ever used. We started to flirt with the idea of maybe me subleasing there some of the time and him some of the time, us working together sometimes. But ultimately, I felt like I had gotten burned by one older guy and I wasn't looking for another situation like it. So I finally sat down with him and I was like, listen, I appreciate you working with me here and trying to help me out. But what I've realized is what I really want is my name on a door as the only name on that door. And if we're going to move forward in any way in this location, it's going to be me here and you exiting. And I said it very respectfully. And he responded very respectfully. He was like, thanks, I appreciate honesty. And he left. And basically what we then did for the next 2 months is negotiated an asset purchase agreement. An asset purchase agreement is not a practice purchase. I wasn't buying any patients. I wasn't buying any of his systems. I wasn't buying his EMR, PM, employees, anything like that. I was simply buying the office, the supplies in that office, literally the printers, the slit lamps he had there. And then he vacated. And then now I have my office with my service location. Now I have my credentialing in place and I tell them, hey, switch the address, which is not easy to do. Insurance companies do not make it easy to switch stuff like that. So now I have ModMed, my EMR, I went and shot for EMRs. I ultimately chose modernizing medicine because I love it. My ModMed and EHR and practice management software both have to get built and configured for SVI. That process is enormous because it involves what I chose to use with ModMed is their billing service called Boost, where basically as soon as I finish a note, the claim gets generated, kicked over to ModMed, where they review it, send it over to the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse makes sure it's a clean claim. They send it off to the payer. Payer decides if they pay it, they adjudicate it. They send it back to the clearinghouse with the ERA and the EOB, and that gets paid to the practice. Well, all of those have to get set up for all of the different payers. So that can't happen till I'm credentialed. I can't get credentialed till I have a location. Can't have a location until I can make it happen. I also can't get a loan until I have a location and the EHR and PM starting to exist so that I can show what I'm going to be doing with my financial projections. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in a holding pattern where I'm waiting for my loan, for the bank to review my loan statements. I'm waiting for the EHR and the PM to be built, basically. I'm waiting for the office to be vacated so I can get in there. But I realized I'm not in control of any of those things right now. And what I realized I was in control of was making my website. And nowadays, it's so easy to make a website. You go on Squarespace and you basically just get it all laid out for you. There's so many companies that charge so much money for expensive websites. And like, sure, they're a little bit more functional and like a little bit cleaner. But like, we're talking like $40,000+ more than the couple $100 I spent making a Squarespace website, which was like good enough. I also went and rented studio time and recorded myself filming a bunch of videos about all different conditions. And then sent those videos. I use this website called Fiverr, which is awesome. It's just freelancers from all around the world. I sent this like hour-long footage of me just talking about all sorts of stuff to a guy, I think he was in Pakistan, and like $500, and 5 hours later, I had like 32 videos. So now all of a sudden, things are starting to come together. I've got some marketing material. I've got a website. I've got my logo, which was also made on Fiverr. I've got my EHR, my PM being built out. The loan comes through. I decide what the diagnostics were actually pretty easy. You just tell who you want that you want it, and they get it pretty quick. So that part was easy. I hire my first employee to start a month before we open the doors to help me sort of build out the operations and build a schedule in the system and start to book patients. And I tear up all the carpet in the office and I lay down laminate hardwood and I rewire everything to modernize it because all the monitors were all VGA compatible. I switched them out for HDMI and DisplayPort monitors. I got myself credentialed at the surgery center. And finally, August 1st, we opened the doors and started seeing patients. And it was shockingly smooth. Because when you build every little piece of it and you know where every little piece of it is, there's not a pen in SVI where I don't know where that pen is. Because it all came from the ground up, completely from the ground up. And now, jump ahead a year and a half. We've gotten to the point where on my clinic days, we're seeing around between 50 and 60 patients, booking about 16 surgical evals each of those days. We have a robust system for booking those surgeries, getting them to the OR efficiently. And I've gone from 1 employee, I now have 11 employees. I have an optometrist. And it's wild to look back just a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, really, I was in the quagmire. I was nowhere. It's April right now. April 2 years ago, it was a pipe dream. But without that much difficulty in the context of actually setting it up, we built a practice. And one thing that I would really love to do, and what I've been loving that I'm doing, is helping other people do it. And kind of showing them that it's not that crazy of an idea to do it. I've been loving talking to our friend Brett and Allison Early and Audrey Rostov and other people who are going through the process. And I know that there's a way for our generation to build their own practices, not get wrapped up in a practice situation that's unfavorable for them long term. And yeah, there's going to be some hardship, and you're going to have to do some HR, and you're going to learn a lot about stuff you didn't know you were going to have to learn about, like billing and coding and all sorts of stuff like that. But for the right person who is seeking autonomy, it's a great pathway, and it's not that hard to do it.
You are living proof that it can be done. But you and I have both heard messaging over the past 2 years, maybe from some in generations ahead of us, that you shouldn't really try going solo. It's too hard. It costs too much money. There's too much stress. What you really should do is try and join a practice that's well established, establish a path for partnership, become a partner there, and then you can do what you really want going solo. But you listed a few people's names. There's probably another 20, 25 people within the 2 years you started your own practice and looking at the next year who are going to be going solo. I wonder if that's going to be one of the defining features of our generation, is a return to autonomy, a return to patient care the way we envision it, not under the control of private equity, not under the control of someone else who's maybe screwed you over from partnership or it working out for your first or second job. And I am so proud of what you have done. I mean, you are a trailblazer. I know many are listening and have watched you go through what you went. Because to be honest, even as your friend watching closely from the sidelines, I was like, man, that's going to be hard. Going slow is going to be hard. And then I saw you do it. And then I saw Brett do it. And now I'm over here thinking, you know what? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. There's going to be sleepless nights. There's going to be nights where you're fretting about the bank account. You're going to be wondering where that next paycheck is coming from. But you did it.
Totally.